Welcome to Our Serbian Friendship, introducing longtime friends and Serbian sisters, Her Royal Highness Princess Brigita Karadjordjevic and Ariane Trifunovic Montemuro. Each program, they come together to share their mutual love of beauty, travel, art, history, and their ancient Orthodox faith. They hope their friendship provides enlightening oral histories of their Serbian heritage connections for the benefit of future generations.
Glad you all joined us today, and I will say Dobro došli and welcome to part 2 of A Serbian Friendship, which is the introduction to our YouTube channel entitled Royalty. And as many of you might have guessed, I love Serbia because I am Serbian. My parents were born there. So I'd like to start by saying, as we always say, Živeli, which means cheers. I'm going to lift up a little glass, and some of you might be wondering, what am I drinking here? It's called Slivovitz. It's plum brandy. So let us say it again, Živeli, to our new series, and I'll take a little sip. Ooh, it is strong, you know, and fragrant. Hopefully I don't turn red as I speak, but this little cup comes from Serbia, actually, where the birthplace of my mother. My father was born in Visegrad, and it's really wonderful to be joining everyone here today. I think you're going to really have a lot of fun learning about European history and royal history, Serbian history, a very, very ancient land. And, you know, if you stop to think about it, taking this oral history that we're doing today, which is a part 2 of the one we've already done, which you should make sure you watch with Prince Vladimir, it's very important to know history, because if we don't know who we are, we will be lost in life. And history is that golden thread really to the future. And we have so much beautiful royal history in Serbia. It's so important to know about it. And I know many of you out there know a little bit about Serbia through a very famous gentleman, a brilliant gentleman, Nikola Tesla. You've heard of the car. My husband has one. But there's so much more to Serbia. So stay tuned. Click on like and subscribe. And those of you out there, I know the Queen's Jubilee is coming up in England in June, but again, Serbia has a very rich royal history. And you all, some of you are tuning in today and don't know a lot about it, but it's going to be told to you firsthand, which is an honor for us, by a gentleman, a prince, who is royal. He has royal lineage on both sides, not just his father's side, but his mother's side also. And his name is His Royal Highness, Prince Vladimir Karadjordjevic. And I'm going to introduce him in one moment. But before I do so, I want to tell you a little bit of a project I just finished about a famous Serb, because during these programs, when we get into talking about the specifics, we're going to talk about some fun places and people. But here's a person you might not have heard about. His name is Draža Mihailovic. Yes, Serbs have these really long, beautiful names. But as my dad used to say, my name is Trifunovic. And a lot of Americans would go, whew, wow, Ariane Trifunovic. That's a mouthful. But my dad used to say, yes, but once you learn it, you'll never forget it. And that's the way Serbia is in general. So let's learn a little bit about this particular person that is very important in Serbian history. He's a general, and I just finished a painting on him. Now, he was a contemporary of my grandfather's, a little bit older, but he was very important, and many might not know that he actually was featured on the 1942 edition of Time magazine. Yes, Time magazine, as Person of the Year, General Draža Mihailovic. Now, think about this. Some people said back then that many people said that he was Hitler's #1 headache, and that no man has given the Nazis a fight like General Draža Mihailovic. He was a very special Serbian general, and I hope you're going to enjoy viewing my painting. And the interesting thing about it is my beloved grandfather, Colonel Velibor Dobrić, who ties me with Prince Vladimir today because he served directly under his leader, Commander Kralj Alexander, the King of Yugoslavia. My grandfather did an illustration of General Draža in the 1950s, and just recently, Vladika Bishop Longin of Chicago, of the U.S., Midwestern section of the U.S., asked me out of the blue to paint General Draža Mihailovic, not knowing that my grandfather had already done so. So I did sort of a group project. My grandfather has already passed, but I felt his presence while I painted this painting. And that's the golden thread that leads us and keeps us from generation to generation, no matter where us Serbs live. And all of us who are interested in the royals and European history need to learn more about this mighty nation. And that's what we're here to do. And Prince Vladimir Karadjordjevic, it's such an honor, my friend. I'm very proud to call you my friend. I sometimes smile thinking that my grandfather is just beaming in heaven saying, Ariancha, I arranged all of you all to meet. I had a little prayer with God. And so let me ask you, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Dobrodošli to the program.
Hvala.
So glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
And I started just a moment ago getting into a very special general. You heard me talk about him, General Draža Mihailovic. And I know part one, I encouraged all of our viewers to go ahead and listen to your wonderful outline of Serbian history up until Tito. You've gone forward and said many things, but today we're going to get a little more personal. But before we do talk about your family specifically, can you tell our listeners anything about General Draža that strikes you personally or that you feel about this very special Serbian general?
Very good question. Thank you, Ariane. It's a tragedy that is probably more poignant and more painful than any Shakespearean tragedy, because Draža Mihailovic is not only a national hero for the Serbian people. I'm surprised that he has not yet been canonized as a saint. This man sacrificed everything on a personal level to fight for king and country. In fact, to correct that, to fight for God, king and country. He got his priorities absolutely right. He was betrayed in a most vicious manner, unfortunately, by our allies, the British, lesser by the Americans, and probably equally by the Russians. Draža Mihailovic was absolutely revered by the world as the first hero to really bring the fight to the German Nazis in home territory, in this case being ex-Yugoslavia, today Yugoslavia back then. We had an added problem, of course, that Croatia sided with Nazi Germany in forming the independent state of Croatia, which also had its fascist leaders who sided with Adolf Hitler against the Orthodox Serbs, as well as all the other denominations, Romanis and so forth. Draža Mihailovic was basically fighting many battles on many sides for the freedom of Yugoslavia under the protection of the crown. Churchill himself, the British Prime Minister at the time, actually stood up and made such an accolade in the House of Commons, putting Draža Mihailovic on a pedestal of absolute supremacy by telling that Serbia has found its soul in Draža Mihailovic and his Chetniks fighting the Germans in a manner that no one else was able to do even later, never mind about that time.
And Prince Vladimir, may I interject?
Yes, indeed.
It's interesting you use the word accolades. When I was painting my oil painting of General Draja, of course, I was inspired by my grandfather's depiction where he had illustrated him with a crown of thorns around his head. And then above, I have my painting in front of me right now. I have to kind of lean over to see, but above it there's the famous song Otopola, Otopola, Pado Ravno Gora. And then on top of that, my grandfather wrote Fala Tebi Tita Draja. And that basically, with the crown of thorns around him, he's a martyr, is what my grandfather was
100%.
saying. And also what we would say, Narodni heroi. He
Absolutely.
is not only a national hero, but really, you're talking about Churchill here and the accolades, but he's a world hero. He was fighting evil for the world to a degree. It's even beyond. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes.
I mean, it was a bigger picture. That's why I think my grandfather put the crown of thorns around him. And don't you think with time, this is going to become, the truth will come out. It will become more evident who he really is as a martyr.
It's funny you say that because when I first used to go to Yugoslavia in the 90s, Draže Mihailović was still viewed as not a traitor so much, but as a Nazi collaborator, as a shadowy figure. And I realized that Tito had done a very good job on butchering the memory of Draža. And it was much later that the courts, the High Court in Serbia, threw out all the charges that Tito put before Draže Mihailović before his execution. So he's been 100% rehabilitated. He is now slowly in the new generation, having his rightful place in the history books as the hero he was. It's taken a hell of a long time. Do you know, a sideline to this story is very tragic. There was a director of the foundation of King Peter I in Oplenac, which is the seat of the Karadjordjevic family in Šumadija. He was absolutely committed to finding the remains of Draža. And unfortunately, he failed because the communists have very, very good tactics at keeping their mouths shut.
Yes.
And
was it a rumor? I heard, or I don't know where I read, that he was possibly buried in something as horrid as under a golf course. I mean, or no one really knows, but have you heard that?
I've heard approximately 5 or 6 fairly repetitive stories about his body being basically cut to pieces to dishonor him as an Orthodox Christian. I've heard that he might very well, as insult to injury, be buried on the grounds of the Dvor in Dedinje. That yes, he was buried in a public area, today a public area, which is either a tennis court or a golf course.
Can you explain, Prince Vladimir, just for our viewers who might not know, Dvor and Dedinje, the meaning and where that is, a little more?
Yes, indeed. The Dvor is a palace complex. It was built by my late grandfather, King Alexander I of Yugoslavia, although he was assassinated before it was finished. What happened very simply was that the original palace in downtown Belgrade was getting too small for the family, if you believe that. But it's true, it is true, because the palace was, of course, the representative building of the royal family. It wasn't a home per se. So King Alexander wanted to build a home in which he can use as a palace and also as a domicile for his children and family. So he started the project in an area of Belgrade, a beautiful area called Dedinje, which is on the hill. And he started building what's known as the Kraljevski Dvor. It's quite funny because although they are named palaces, they were not supposed to be viewed as such. They were private villas of enormous size and enormous beauty. But
Wow.
the palace always remained as such to be the palace in downtown Belgrade.
For
A beautiful
formal
place.
events. So the villas, the Dvor would be more just family. Would anything?
Yes, although it did turn into very, very official buildings for official meetings, official ceremonies, and so forth. I don't believe that was the original plan at the very beginning, although there are arguments against that.
Right.
People who were present at that time wrote books on it, saying that it was supposed to be the official building of the king and queen, as well as their home.
So that leads me to my next question. Now, we've gotten the idea of Draja, and with time, we're going to see how the truth will eventually rise to the
Please
top
God,
about
yes.
this incredible martyr and hero, not only for Serbs, but also for the world. Let's get into a little bit of personal history. We want to know more about your family, your royal family, starting with your grandfather, his full name, and he had 3 sons. Start there, please, and then come up to this day and you.
It's very, very sort of long-winded, so I'll try and keep it as short as possible. My late grandfather was His Majesty King Alexander I of Yugoslavia. He was quite an amazing man in many ways. He had so many talents as a human being, let alone as a king. The irony is that he was not born as the king, in that he was the second son of his father, King Peter I. His brother, George, was the crown prince, but George did not show the interest or the wanting in his attitudes that were needed at that time to be king of, then it was Serbia, later to become the kingdom of Croats, Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes.
And
Later,
where was your grandfather born?
he was born in Belgrade.
Oh, in Belgrade.
Yes, yes, he was born in Belgrade. He was actually, I think, probably the man who was destined to be the king from birth, although he wasn't birthright to be king.
Right.
It was a situation whereby politics ruled the waves, although the monarchy was just that, a monarchy. It
Right.
wasn't a constitutional monarchy as we have today, or a parliamentary monarchy. It was literally the king reigns and rules.
Right. But your grandfather was popular because my father always told me, and my father is much older than my mother. He was born in 1923, but he was named Alexander. My father was named after your grandfather. That was a very popular thing to do back then because
Incredible.
they loved the king.
Incredible. Absolutely. I mean, I think it was very, very common in those
Yeah.
days.
And Alexander, what a fitting name for your grandfather, means helper to humanity.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And he's known as the unifier because, of course, it was under his kingdom that Yugoslavia was created.
Oh, I love that. And that leads me to something, again, that golden thread that binds us all together, Prince Vladimir. When I was born on December 1st, my grandparents, Colonel Velibor, and my grandmother Darinka, who was a daughter of a Serbian Orthodox priest, all they kept saying was, our Ariantia was born December 1st when Serbia, when Yugoslavia became Yugoslavia. All those
Absolutely.
dates were very significant. Let's turn to your father now. You're talking about, we talked about names of your grandfather. Tell us a little bit about your father's name, his brother's names. Let's put the spotlight on your father right now.
My
So the
father,
children,
my father was the third child
the
of
third.
King Alexander and Queen Maria.
And the age differences would be approximately?
They were sort of quite equal. My father was born in 1929.
Okay.
Tomislav was born, I believe, 2 years before him, if I'm not mistaken, and King Peter in 1923. So Peter was a little older by sort of measure. The relationship between the brothers was very, very close in childhood. Unfortunately, that changed due to the political situation when they were in exile, also due to the geographical situation.
Right.
But they were very, very close. Of course, King Peter was the crown prince, and he was schooled and brought up as such. His place was to be the next king after his father, King Alexander.
Where was he born?
Sorry?
Where was Peter, the first
Peter
son?
was born in Belgrade, whereas my father was born in Bled, in Slovenia.
Oh, Bled. Yeah, my grandmother was Slovenian, so I have a little bit of Slovenian blood. I've been to Bled. That's beautiful. Was that Serbian territory or?
No, that was Slovenia. It was always Slovenia. It was part of the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes.
Right.
And
but the property, was that your family's property?
The property was the property of the king, of King Alexander. And the reason that my father was born in Slovenia was to basically acknowledge with great pride the kingdom of Yugoslavia. So it would be nice if one was born in Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia.
It's symbolic.
Yes, exactly. This is why Tomislav has the name of or a Croatian name rather than a Serbian name. Petar and Andrej. Andrej is also a very, very common Slovenian name, whereas Petar is probably the most common Serbian name.
Yes.
So it was all done on purpose.
That is very interesting. So the three sons, the three unifiers, what a balanced number, the Holy Trinity. They looked very purposely of the areas, but again, that speaks to your grandfather again, thinking of what he did, the great unifier.
Yes, indeed.
It really, his sons represent that in a way. That's interesting.
Absolutely. In fact, you asked me where King Alexander was born, didn't you?
Yes.
Not in Belgrade. Sorry, no. He was born in Cetinje.
Cetinje. I was there.
He was born in Montenegro.
They have, they have at the monastery there, they have the hand of St. John the Baptist that baptized Christ.
Yes, they did.
They did. Okay. I was there in 2019. I can't remember. And they had it, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
When I was there.
It was in Sveti Petar of Cetinje. Yes, in the monastery. We heard that the Djukanovic government has placed it into the museum that it was originally in when it was stolen in the Second World War, well, after the Second World War, during the Second World War. So
where is this museum?
It's in Cetinje.
Oh, it is.
It's in Cetinje, yes. But it's a sort of municipal museum rather than being sort of anything to do with the church. So it's
but in any case, Prince Vladimir, the hand that baptized Christ, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, is in the city that your grandfather was born in.
Yes.
That's a holy place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a wonderful experience. I mean,
That's a royal city, all the spiritually as well as for Serbs.
absolutely.
Serbian royal city as well as a spiritually rich,
Absolutely.
very rich city.
Cetinje is a very, very important city in the history of the entire monarchy story of Yugoslavia.
Right. So
Very.
the youngest son of Kraj, King Alexander, your father, also has a connection to the U.S. near the area that I live here in Nashville. We're under the Midwestern jurisdiction, and we have a beautiful cathedral that is modeled after Gračanica up in, and I believe he helped. It's called Novo Gračanica Monastery now. Your father did a lot of work up there and helped the Serbian Americans here. Not many people know that in the U.S.
It's a very, very deep story. It causes some pain still today, because we had a split in our Serbian Orthodox Church.
Yes, I know about it through my parents, and I grew up with that.
Exactly. I was very, very lucky, because in 1990, after my father's death, I was basically blessed to be able to visit both sides of the church and to have the love and respect of both sides of the church. I didn't suffer the stigmatism that was apparently very, very prevalent during the bad years. But my father made a very conscious decision to follow his brother, King Peter, and to support what was then the Free Serbian Orthodox Church of North America.
Right.
And they had lost Libertyville to the mother church of Belgrade. So they wanted to build themselves not only a new church, but a seminary, graveyard,
right,
and a school. So they started the project with the American government's help, in particular a congressman by the name of Congressman Crane. And the money was very, very centrally collected from Serbian immigration and from government help from the United States. And my father was very much a rallying point. He was a very, very close friend of Metropolitan Irene, who was the metropolitan, at that time a bishop, but to become a metropolitan of Gračanica, Novi Gračanica. And my father was basically spiritually called upon to act as I suppose we would call it in Serbia tichtor, a donator, or almost like a kum, almost like a godfather.
Yes. Yeah, and in English, to help people that might not be Orthodox Christians, sort of like a rallying point, a center point around people can come together to fulfill a purpose.
Yes, indeed.
It is what Prince Vladimir's father did in a very important way here in the U.S. And I mean, I was just thinking about your father's difficult life. He was really, his life began in such security, stability, foundation. Then it totally went in limbo with the assassination of your grandfather in Marseille. And that I mean, your grandmother must have been a very strong woman to bear such pain.
She was. She was, you know, Ariane, it's very, very snobbish to say this, but there are members of certain royal families, and I do not include myself because of my upbringing being completely different. They are born for the role.
Yes.
And I
agree.
Just with the nose in the air and the silver spoon. I mean with the assassinations, with the tragedies, with the immense riches, immense losses, the political turmoils. And my grandmother was such a person. She was born to be queen of Yugoslavia without
Yes.
her even knowing it.
Well, and you know, the old saying, you know, and this goes both ways. Behind every great man is a great woman. It goes
Oh,
both ways, but let's just take it the first way. I can look at her legacy even in you, because all the good work that you've done with Princesa Brigita, all the love you have for Serbia with no ulterior motive. You're just doing it for love. But yes, some people are born and they do it so magnificently, and you can tell from the photographs. I mean, I never met her, but I feel such a dignity, such a strength when I see her with your father and his brothers after the fact. I feel such like an anchor. My mother used to say, and she became a widow younger. She was only 50, but she still
oh,
had to still put us through school. The mother is the beam of the house that holds it up. And you know, Prince Vladimir, I wanted to ask one question. Tell us a little bit about the royal family today, the current description of the royals.
The royal family today is split into two branches, or should I say two major branches with branches within them. You have the what's called the ruling branch, which is the descendants of King Alexander I. Then you have the other side, which is the descendants of the regent Prince Paul. Um, my family is, of course, on the side of King Alexander I. Today we have Prince Alexander, who is the son of King Peter II. He's married to a Greek lady by the name of Princess Catherine. Prince Alexander has, from his first marriage, three wonderful sons. They are Peter, Philip, and Alexander. Then we have the Tomislav branch, which was, of course, King Peter's brother, second brother. Tomislav branch today has Princess Katarina, Prince Nicola, Prince Georgia, and Prince Mihailo. Then we have my father's branch, the Andrei branch. We have my sister Tatiana. We have my late brother Christopher, who unfortunately died in 1994. Then we have my sister Lavinia, my brother Dimitri, and myself. They are the current members of the family today. Of course, there are children. For example, on the side of King Peter II, we have Prince Philip has a son Stefan. Then on the side of Prince Tomislav, we have Prince Mihailo with two daughters. One of them born, I believe, yesterday or day before yesterday. I can't remember. What am I looking? No, yesterday.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Brand new.
Isidora, Princess Isidora. So it's a growing
It's
family.
quite an extended family.
Oh,
And
yes.
I just I didn't realize one of your sisters' name is Tatiana. One of my
Yes.
favorite names.
Oh,
Our
sweet.
daughter Anna came close to be named Tatiana.
Aw.
And wasn't that the royal, or is this just gossip? Here we go with some royal gossip. Didn't your grandfather have a certain affection for one of the Romanovs? Tatiana?
Yes,
Would that
yes,
be?
indeed. Yes, indeed.
She was the second born. I think Olga was first, then Tatiana.
Yes.
And she did a lot of incredible humanitarian work. And I read about it for such a young age. So no wonder your grandfather was attracted to her. Of course, she met a martyr's death with her beautiful
Absolutely.
family.
Absolutely. In
That must
fact,
have been hard on him.
it was immensely hard because it's very, very convoluted. But the simple answer is that my grandfather was destined to marry into the Romanovs.
Yes.
It
Wow.
was planned and it was discussed at a very, very high diplomatic level. Even our Prime Minister at the time, Nikola Pasic, was involved in discussions. When the Ekaterinburg murders took place, the slaughter of the Romanovs,
Yeah.
my grandfather instantly cut off all diplomatic relationships with the communist Russia, Soviet Union.
Yes, of course.
Uh,
Yes. Oh,
It was
that was a real personal hit. It was a national tragedy also for Serbia because of what an incredible relationship, but also it was an immensely personal hit for him on so many levels. And
absolutely right.
I just, it's amazing that your sister has that name. It just, you know,
Yes.
there's you know, a lot of phrases or short words that are repeated in the Bible, and I always take note of one, which is, and we hear it in the liturgy a lot, I shall remember thy holy name from generation to generation. And it's interesting, there's a certain degree of holiness that continues in devout families like yours that are godly. And it's amazing that your sister has that name. I hope to meet her one day. I would like to meet
She's
her.
a wonderful human being.
Yeah, she has a beautiful name to suit her then.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite interesting, Ariana, because through the tragedy of the Romanovs, we were to become the benefactors of the Holy Arm of St. John the Baptist, because it was Tsar Nicholas's mother who actually brought it from Russia when she left. She left very late, and she wasn't going to leave, but she was asked to please get out before any harm comes to her.
Yes.
And she brought the arm of St. John to Denmark to her sister, and it was agreed that it was actually an Orthodox priest, a Russian Orthodox priest in Denmark, that convinced her the safest place for the keeping of the relics, the holy relics of St. John, would be in the royal house of Karadjordjevic.
This is amazing. We have to pause again. I've said this before, but amidst such tragedy, such horror, as you use the word aptly, slaughter of the Romanovs, yes, a beautiful and holy family, truly. And this beautiful relationship where your grandfather was really slated, yes, except what had happened and everything changed, to marry into this beautiful family, Romanov, and for her to be with your grandfather. Then the tragedy occurs. Time goes by during this tumultuous time, and the Tsar, Nicholas II's mother, who's Danish, is convinced to escape. Not many are left. She is blessed enough to escape. God preserved her life, and she carries with her, again, everyone, listen to this. Any Christians out there, this is an amazing thing. That's why this song, my mother used to say, Koto laja, Serbia mala. Who says that? Who lies that Serbia is little? So the decision was made, was God's will. Absolutely. That the hand of St. John the Baptist, again, the hand that baptized Christ, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, was slated to come to be in Serbian hands of the Serbian Orthodox Church. And that was God's will. And this is an amazing thing through your family. And that's why royalty, especially Orthodox royalty, is holy. It, you know, I'm not saying there aren't, you know, we've had so many past stories, interesting things, falling outs. That's the way history is, good and bad. But generally speaking, the sacrament of ordination, it's a sacrament to become the king. It's holy, and to receive this gift. Thank you for telling us this story because it's just something we should not forget. Serbia is a mighty, mighty gift from God on many levels. We need to explore this, and we will in our series. Well, Prince Vladimir, that's a wonderful description of the family right now at this present time. And as we say, Serbian roots, I mean, look at me, are everywhere now. Could you give us a little update on where they are right now and how you ended up where you are?
Yes, indeed. It started in 1947. We could say 1945 with the abolition of the monarchy in Yugoslavia by Tito and his communists. But in 1947, it was Edvard Kardelj who, on behalf of the Tito regime, basically banished the royal family in exile, banished the royal family from Yugoslavia, and took all our properties, lands, and wealth. So we were basically thrown out of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, which had been abolished. So at that time, there was King Peter with his son Alexander. There was Queen Marie, my father Andrei, and my brother, my uncle Tomislav. They were all in the United Kingdom. And King Peter later went to Monte Carlo and then later to the United States. That's where he lived his last days in the United States and unfortunately died a very, very miserable death. Prince Tomislav remained, his mainstay was in Kent in Great Britain. And my father and my mother, we moved all to Portugal with my brother, sister, my stepbrother and my stepsister as well. We all moved to Portugal for a while. Then, unfortunately, my mother and father divorced, and my father went on to the United States of America. Prince Alexander was very active in South America and in North America. As a businessman, the son of King Peter II. He was married to Braganza. So they were very much sort of centralized in South America until they divorced and Prince Alexander went back to the United Kingdom. I myself was born with my brother and sister in the United Kingdom. We, of course, were born much later. I was born in 1964. My sister a couple of years earlier and my brother a year later. So we knew nothing of the homeland until much, much later, unfortunately. So yes, the royal family at that time was very much sort of spread around the globe. It was in 2001 that the government under Zoran Đinđić, who was the president at the time, he was in the mind of giving back the properties and rights of the royal family. My cousin Prince Alexander returned with his wife and sort of laid the foundations of this momentous occasion, which never happened, because of course Đinđić was assassinated outside the Houses of Parliament in Serbia. So the plan for the reinstatement of the monarchy and the plan to reinstate the sort of criteria under which a monarchy rules within Serbia died, in fact, with Đinđić. This is much more than just a rumor. It's actually a silent fact. Unfortunately, the subsequent governments did not favor the idea of present-day monarchy within present-day Serbia.
Prince Vladimir, around what time was he assassinated? What year are you talking about, approximately?
It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2001 after the return, because we actually, it was a long, long story. We actually had a meeting in Budapest in 1999 which was the first foundation stone of this plan. And it involved certain members of the advisory bodies to my cousin, Prince Alexander, and Mr. Zoran Djindjic, who was there as part of the united opposition against Slobodan Milosevic. And they had sort of hatched this tentative plan. And if you do believe the stories, the planned event of either a reinstatement of the monarchy or of some major change to the diplomatic influence of the Karadjordjevics was to take place in 2004, which of course was the major bicentenary of the uprising of our forefather Karadjordj in 1804.
Wow.
But unfortunately, as I say, it never came to be because of the assassination. So we are in limbo.
Because when I think about my grandparents and parents and Serbs of the generation I was raised in, the Serbian royals are such a great unifying force for us to gather together. As we said earlier, a rallying point. And I hope that, it's also a sense of pride. The royals are a sense of pride for us. And, I'm speaking of a certain generation, but I just hope there's so much history with you all. I hope that that continues to build and that you return and are able to teach more of the newer generation of who Karadjordjevic is and the family and the holy royal history that you all embody. It's really beautiful. And again, I'm so honored to hear the current state and everything that has happened. It gives us a fuller picture of the present status of the Karadjordjevic family.
Yeah, it's rather tragic and rather complicated. The irony is that if you take the most simplistic denomination of what is a monarchy, it is a means of bringing the people closer to God. That's all it is.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with golden crowns and pomp and ceremony. This is all man-made. The actual ideal of a kingdom, of a king, is the servant of God to bring his people to God.
You nailed it. That is so true. And what inspires a human more in life, in our everyday mundane life, is God. I mean, what else are we fighting for? Why do they say God and country? And God is always first in anything and everything. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Istina. No more can be said. That's what it represents. And you would think on a human level that it's a basic need, really, to have the royals as a center point for any nation.
One would wish, yes, because it does bring a very realistic semblance of continuity, of stability,
order.
And order. Yes, indeed.
Because God is order. Without God, there's chaos.
Absolutely right.
There's no. So that's perfectly said. I love when things are wrapped up to the point, to understand. It's really very important to keep that in the forefront of our minds as we ponder royal history, and everything we've talked about today. And in the first, what you said in the very beginning, the background of your family. It's very important to keep that in mind. God first at all times.
Absolutely.
The legacy of your family continues to this day and is an inspiration for Serbs like me. And I think this is probably a good place for us to kind of slowly come to an end, because what we're doing right now is laying the groundwork for this incredible series that we're going to be doing with your wife, Her Royal Highness Princesa Brigita Karadjordjevic, my dear friend. I respect you all so much, but she entered into this family through you as a royal, becoming a royal. But to me, I always tell my friends here, she's truly a Serb. I mean, I've met some Serbs, and God forgive me, I mean, I'll be the first to criticize myself, that are not as Serbian as she is. I mean, she loves Serbia. I feel inspired by her, and I know that it was God's will that you two came together. It was God's will that she was chosen by God to be a princess. And of course, you were born that way as a prince, but she became through you. But this is meant to be. And through this golden legacy of your family, we are going to learn so much, not just about history, European history, Serbian history, royal history. We're going to have fun. We're going to talk about also what it is to be, there's a certain royal protocol, but my mother, taught me to always be a lady without giving me much details how to do it. She just was one. So we're going to learn about so many things. Prince Vladimir, you already know about this because you are married to beautiful Princesa Brigita, and etiquette, fashion, style, all things she's going to tell us about, people, places. The two of us are going to talk about it together. I wanted to ask you, do you mind from time to time maybe popping back in if we have a special show about, say, a historic place? We might talk about Novi Sad, or we might talk about, hey, we might talk about the wines of Serbia.
Oh,
so would you mind popping back in, Prince
not at all.
Vladimir?
It would be a pleasure and an honor, an absolute pleasure and honor.
That's wonderful. Here's a moment where I'll say to all of our viewers a couple of fun tips. Number one, if you want to learn about high style, make sure you tune in. If you want to smile, make sure you tune in. But before we can do any of this, you've got to click like and subscribe so we can keep doing our videos. And this is the second half. Prince Vladimir has given us some more details about his family, his royal lineage, and we're going to now be moving into our videos. They will be called royalty. And to make you all smile out there, I lifted a glass, which I'm going to end on too, with a little Slivovitz. We also call that rakia. But this comes a rich area in Serbia called Shumadija, and I know, Prince Vladimir, you have been there many a time, and it's a beautiful area, isn't it, in Serbia, Shumadija?
It's absolutely delightful. It's probably, as they say, a jewel in the crown of Serbia.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to end with a little fun story, and I know it's going to make Prince Vladimir smile, and if Princess Brigita, when she listens to this, I think she will too. Whenever I was sick, my mother would give me what they call Serbian tea.
Oh.
And you'd put a little bit of sugar, water, and of course, some Slivovitz, and have a sip or two. And I'm telling you, it'll clear out any blockages in your nasal passages better than any kind of cough medicine. So here's to the future of our series, and I want to really thank you, Fala, Prince Vladimir. This is something that is a treasure for all of us. I myself, speaking as a Serbian American, thank you for preserving this royal history for us. It's important for us Serbs wherever we are in the world, and also for anyone. You can be Serbian or not. It's important to know history in general. That way we know who we really are and where we came from. So on that note, Živali, and I'll try it again, but my mom and dad always had this in the house, but they never really drank it. But oh boy, here we go. Ooh, hope I don't get red. Oh, I know some Serbian friends here. They just take it back, but I'm sorry, everyone. I can't quite do that. But I end on a big živeli. Thank you again, and God bless you all. And we're going to learn a little bit more as the series goes on the Kirill Foundation. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this wonderful series. And but we can't tell you everything today. You've got to tune in. So thanks again for being with us. And remember, when you lift that glass at home or you lift the tea mug with the Serbian tea, remember to say cheers, živeli. Thank you very, very much. And with a heartfelt thank you for all the wonderful knowledge you've passed on to us, Prince Vladimir. Thanks again.
Hvala vam.
Do viđenja. Do viđenja.
Do viđenja.
Stay tuned to learn more about the Kirill Foundation, whose goal is to endeavor to help the Serbian people. To learn more about Serbian history and culture, read Ariane's first book, I Shall Remember Thy Holy Name from Generation to Generation, available for purchase online at Amazon.com, along with her other faith-based titles, Debt of Love and Saint Matrona the Blind, Our Friend in Christ. Order today and be inspired in your faith.